Hey, squirrels! Oh my gosh. Let's try that again. Hello, squirrels! Oh my gosh. I hope. Just did a happy mail. I hope it has sound. Chapter 5, Prince Charming. I'm just going to read half of it because my girls are in the park and I don't want to miss them. So I can get back here and see them a little bit and then get back for 3. The old glove lay upon the floor forgotten while Rose sat musing till a quick step sounded in the hall, and a voice drew near, tunefully humming. As he was walking down the street, the city for to view, oh, there he spied a bonny lass, the window looking through. Select, he jumped up to the stair and twirled at the pen. Oh, wait, say ready as herself to let the laddie in. I'm sure I slayed that. Sang Rose as the voice paused and a tap came at the door. Good morning, Rosamunda. Here are your letters and your most devoted, ready to execute any commissions you may have for him, was Charlie's greeting as he came in looking comely, gay, and debonair as usual. Thanks, I've no errands unless you mail my replies, if these need answering, so by your leave, Prince. And Rose began to open the handful of notes he threw into her lap. Ha, what sight is this to blast mine eyes, ejaculated Charlie as he pointed to the glove with a melodramatic start, for, like most accomplished amateur actors, he was fond of introducing private theatricals into his daily talk and conversation. Uncle left it. 'Tis well, methought perchance a rival had been here, and picking it up, Charlie amused himself with putting it on the head of a little Psyche which ornamented the mantelpiece, softly singing, as he did so, another verse of the old song. He set his Jenny on his knee, all in his Highland dress, for brawly well he kinged the way to please a bonny lass. Rose went on reading her letters, but all the while was thinking of her conversation with her uncle, as well as something else suggested by the newcomer and his ditty. During the 3 months since her return, she had seen more of this cousin than of any of the others, for he seemed to be the only one who had leisure to play with Rose, as they used to say years ago. The other boys were all at work, even little Jamie, many whose play hours were devoted to manful struggles with Latin grammar, the evil genius of his boyish life. Dr. Alec had many affairs to arrange after his long absence. Phoebe was busy with her music, and Aunt Plenty still actively superintended her housekeeping. Thus it fell out quite naturally that Charlie should form the habit of lounging in at all hours, with letters, messages, bits of news, and agreeable plans for Rose. He helped her with her sketching, rode with her, sang with her, took her to parties as a matter of course, for Aunt Clara, being the gayest of the sisters, played chaperone on all occasions. For a time it was very pleasant, but by and by Rose began to wish Charlie would find something to do like the rest, and not make dawdling after her the business of his life. The family was used to his self-indulgent ways, and there was an amiable delusion in the minds of the boys that he had a right to the best of everything. For to them he was still the prince, the flower of the flock, and in time to be an honor to the name. No one exactly knew how, for though full of talent, he seemed to have no especial gift or bias, and the elders began to shake their heads because, in spite of many grand promises and projects, the moment for decisive action never came. Rose saw all this and longed to inspire her brilliant cousin with some manful purpose, which should win for him respect as well as admiration. But she found it very hard, for though he listened with imperturbable good humor, and owned his shortcomings with delightful frankness. He always had some argument, reason, or excuse to offer, and out-talked her in 5 minutes, leaving her silenced but unconvinced. Of late she had observed that he seemed to feel as if her time and thoughts belonged exclusively to him, and rather resented the approach of any other claimant. This annoyed her and suggested the idea that her affectionate interest and efforts were misunderstood by him, misrepresented and taken advantage of by Aunt Clara, who had been most urgent that she should use her influence with the dear boy. Though the fond mother resented all other interference, the troubled Rose made her feel as if caught in a snare. While she owned to herself that Charlie was the most attractive of her cousins, she was not ready to be taken possession of in this masterful way, especially since other and sometimes better men sought her favor more humbly. These thoughts were floating vaguely in her mind as she read her letters, and unconsciously influenced her in the chat that followed. Only invitations, and I can't stop to answer them now or I shall never get through this job, she said, returning to her work. Let me help. You do up and I'll direct. Have a secretary do now and see what a comfort it will be, proposed Charlie, who could turn his hand to anything and had made himself quite at home in the sanctum. I'd rather finish this for myself, but you may answer the notes if you will. Just regrets to all 2 or 3. Read the names as you go along, and I'll tell you which. To hear is to obey. Who says I'm a frivolous idler now? And Charlie sat down at the writing table with alacrity, for these hours in the little room were his best and happiest. Order is heaven's first law, and the view a lovely one, but I don't see any notepaper, he added, opening the desk and surveying its contents with interest. Right-hand drawer, violet monogram for the notes, plain paper for the business letter. I'll see to that, though, answered Rose, trying to decide whether Annabelle or Emma should have the laced handkerchief. Confiding creature. Suppose I open the wrong drawer and come upon the tender secrets of your soul, continued the new secretary, rummaging out the delicate notepaper with masculine disregard of order. Haven't got any, answered Rose demurely. What? Not one despairing scrawl, one cherished miniature, one faded floweret, etc., etc. I can't believe it, cousin, and he shook his head incredulously. If I had, I certainly should not show them to you, impertinent person. There are a few little souvenirs in that desk, but nothing very sentimental or interesting. I'd like to see him, but I should never dare to ask, observed Charlie, peering over the top of the half-open lid with a most persuasive pair of eyes. You may if you want to, but you'll only be disappointed, Paul Pry. Lower left-hand drawer with the key in it. Angel of goodness, how shall I requite thee? Interesting moment, with what palpitating emotions art thou fraught? And quoting from the Mysteries of Udolpho, he unlocked and opened the drawer with a tragic gesture. 7 locks of hair in a box, all light. For here's your straw color, your orange tawny, your French crown color, and your perfect yellow Shakespeare. They look very familiar, and I fancy I know the heads they thatched. Yes, you all gave me one when I went away, you know, and I carried them round the world with me in that very box. I wish the heads had gone too. Here's a jolly little amber god with a gold ring in his back, and a most balmy breath, continued Charlie, taking a long sniff at the scent bottle. Uncle brought me that long ago, and I'm very fond of it. This now looks suspicious. Man's ring with a lotus cut on the stone and a note attached. I tremble as I ask who, when, and where. A gentleman on my birthday in Calcutta. I breathe again. It was my sire? Don't be absurd. Of course it was. And he did everything to make my visit pleasant. I wish you'd go and see him like a dutiful son instead of idling here. That's what Uncle Mac is eternally telling me, but I don't intend to be lectured into the treadmill till I've had my first fling, muttered Charlie rebelliously. If you fling yourself in the wrong direction, you may find it hard to get back again, began Rose gravely. No fear if you look after me as you seem to have promised to do, judging by the thanks you get in this note. Poor old governor, I should like to see him, for it's almost 4 years since he came home last, and he must be getting on. Charlie was the only one of the boys who ever called his father governor, or governor, perhaps because the others knew and loved their fathers while he had seen so little of him, that the less respectful respectful name came more readily to his lips, since the elder man in truth seemed a governor issuing requests or commands which the younger too often neglected or resented. Long ago, Rose had discovered that Uncle Stephen found homemade so distasteful by his wife's devotion to society that he performed the exile himself, taking business as an excuse for his protracted absences. The girl was thinking of this as she watched her cousin turn the ring about with the sudden sobriety which became him well, and believing that the moment was propitious, she said earnestly, "He is getting on. Dear Charlie, do think of duty more than pleasure in this case, and I'm sure you will never regret it. Do you want me to go?" he asked quickly. "I think you ought. And I think you'd be much more charming if you didn't always be worrying about right and wrong. Uncle Alec taught you that along with the rest of his queer notions." "I'm glad he did," cried Rose warmly, then checked herself and said with a patient sort of sigh, "You know women always want the men they care for to be good and can't help trying to make them so." "So they do, and we ought to be a set of angels, but I've a strong conviction that if we were, the dear souls wouldn't like us half as well, would they now?" asked Charlie with an insinuating smile. "Perhaps not, but that is dodging the point. Will you go?" persisted Rose unwisely. "No, I will not." That was sufficiently decided, and an uncomfortable pause followed, during which Rose tied a knot unnecessarily tight, and Charlie went on exploring the drawer with more energy than interest. "Why, here's an old thing I gave you ages ago," he suddenly exclaimed in a pleased tone, holding up a little agate heart on a faded blue ribbon. "Will you let me take away the heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh?" he asked, half in earnest, half in jest, touched by the little trinket and the recollections it awakened. "No, I will not," answered Rose bluntly, much displeased by the irreverent and audacious question. Charlie looked rather abashed for a moment, but his natural light-heartedness made it easy for him to get the better of his own brief fits of waywardness and put others in good humor with him and themselves. Now we're even. Let's drop the subject and start afresh," he said with an irresistible affability as he coolly put the little heart in his pocket and prepared to shut the drawer. But something caught his eye, and exclaiming, "What's this? What's this?" he snatched up a photograph which lay half under a pile of letters with foreign postmarks. Oh, I forgot. Let's see. Oh, I forgot that was there, said Rose hastily. Who's the man? Demanded Charlie, eyeing the good-looking countenance before him with a frown. That's the Honorable Gilter Murray, who went up the Nile with us and shot crocodiles and other small game, being a mighty hunter. As I told you in my letters, answered Rose gaily, though ill-pleased at the little discovery just then, for this had been one of the narrow escapes her uncle spoke of. And I'll stop there. That'll just be the first part of chapter 4. Have a wonderfully crafty day, and I hope to see you live tea at 3 shortly. Love ya. Be sweet, don't be ugly.